looking for our feed on YouTube so I can send it to Sister Wynn. If I'm not seeing it. There you go. I didn't mean to do that. No. All right. Share. Okay. Oh, Lord. So we come to the end of our journey here with this book here. And tonight is, our last installment, talking about overcomer. In your opinion, what does it mean to be an overcomer? Anybody? Uh-huh. Okay. Go ahead. Triumphant? All right. You gonna say something, babe? Oh, I thought you were saying something. You got to have one big word for the day. Does an overcomer avoid their life, or do they live their life and learn how to process it? Yeah, learn how to process it. You got to be an overcomer. If we look at our world today, remember something that I believe is probably one of the most negative things that ever happened in our country as far as our race is concerned, and that was slavery. And most of us have a problem talking about it and dealing with it when you look at how things were done, and then especially if you see something today that kind of mirrors what happened back then, you immediately get frustrated. But we have to be careful to learn to deal with our past rather than let our past deal with us. We can't allow the hatred from yesterday to cause us to be haters today. Because when we do, we become just like the ones who we say hurt us the most. So, how do we process moving past things that we really cannot deal with? I'll do number one. Number one, you have to face the reality of it. You have to face, you can't live in la-la land. A lot of people live in la-la land. It happened, we acknowledge it, but now that it happened, what do we do now? How do we move forward? Number one. Number two, we got to forgive. All right? And number three, we got, actually 2A, is we have to give people a chance to show us that they're not like who we think they're like. And most of us can't do that. Part of the reason why we can't do it is because most of us honestly don't know who we are. It's not them that doesn't know our identity that's hurting us. It's you not knowing your identity that's hurting you. All right? So how do we move forward by taking on the attitude and the mindset of the Lord Jesus? But not only is it like that with slavery, we can trace those same roots to stuff in our marital relationships. Because of our past, what happened in the past, we can't move on. Then you find yourself 30 years together stuck. All right? What about friendships? There was a time when you could trust everybody. Now it's almost like you don't know who to trust. Go ahead, babe. Well, well, number one, you had to learn. You had to learn and know your limits. Now, anybody in here ever been sloppy drunk? Raise your hand if you ever been sloppy drunk. All right, come on, you lying. All right. So, what's the thing that you say when you get sloppy drunk? Lord, if you let me come down. Yeah, right? And so instead of us now thinking that we can drink a case, you start drinking a half a case. That when it comes to people and being hurt, sometimes we're hurt because we trusted people to do stuff that they're not capable of. And then you should get married talking about, promise me that you'll never hurt me. You might as well not get married. You might as well just stay single. You don't need to get married. You don't need to have no friends. None of that kind of stuff. Because life is about forgiving. That's the reason why it's there, because you have to use it. You know, we use the F word, we use the wrong F word. You get what I'm saying? So tonight, day 3 of the final week, Paul was made new and led from a position of strength. All right. Someone read for me. It's the same handouts I gave y'all a couple weeks ago. It's probably some on in our church. We got a bar. It's probably some in the bar out there. You have to find them. All right. Peter wrote about faith that's refined by fire. 1 Peter 1:7. Somebody get that for us. 1 Peter 1:7. 1 Peter 1:7. You ain't got one? 1 Peter chapter 1, verse number 7. Somebody gonna read that for us? Yeah, all right. So listen, everybody wants to have faith, but nobody wants to be tested. All right, everybody wants faith, nobody wants to be tested. So how do you test something? If something is broken, say you break your bed. I don't know how you would break your bed, but you break your bed. And you fix it up. Put you some blocks under it. Put some wood under it or something. Build it up. Build your platform. Well, how will you know whether or not it's going to hold you if you don't lay in it again? And then when you lay in it, you kind of be careful not that I ever broke a bed. You kind of be careful, and then you try not to make subtle moves, because it was a subtle move that had you on the floor the last time. All right? How many of us in our life want faith, but we're afraid of the test? We want to be faith. We want to be strong in God. We want to do great exploits for Him. We want to do much for the kingdom, but we're afraid to trust God after we've had a failure. Sometimes we say, I messed up. I ain't coming to church no more. I messed up. I ain't going to do this no more. I feel ashamed. Some Sundays, I showed up and just ashamed. What'd you say? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yes. But listen, it's just like this. My children, as long as I'm here, every day they will have a place to lay their head and something to eat as long as I'm alive. They guarantee that as long as I'm alive. Now, if they get strung out on some drugs or something, no, of course, when they call me, I'm not giving them no money. If they out and have a wreck in my car and mess it up, and I know that they was, just out there hot dogging, well, the next time they ask, no, they can't have the keys. You see what I'm saying? But I still give them a chance. You have to learn how to put boundaries on relationships. Some people can't be trusted. You can't trust them to loan them $100 because they're not going to pay you back. And after you done not got paid back enough times, you ought to know by now you ain't going to get your money back. So faith has to be tested. Anything that's worth something has gone through something. All the gold, you know the reason why fake gold turned green after a little while? Because it ain't been through nothing. And if the first time it go through something is in your mouth around them pork chops and pig feet and chitlins, then it's going to turn green because it hadn't been through, it hadn't been tested by fire. Real gold has been burnt up before it get to you. That's how your faith in God has to be. Has to be so strong that you can be cast down and you can be trampled over, but it still doesn't shake your faith in God. And some people say, well, man, Pastor, I ain't no punk. I ain't going to let nobody just talk to me, and then I'm going to give them another chance. Well, that's one reason why you're lonely. You don't have no friends. You're depressed. And you say no, you say nobody don't fool with you, but the truth is you don't fool with nobody. Because the Bible said, he who has friends must what? Right? So when you trust God, and sometimes you're going to look like the fool. I have some friends in my life that I'm a type of person, if I'm down for you, I'm down for you. I'm going to be loyal. Nobody can come to me and tell me something on you and it change how I feel about you. That's just how I am. Look at my wife. She knows that. That's just how I am. I'm going to be, that's just what it is. Because nobody has to tell me about Fred because I know Fred. I know what he's capable of. I know what he's not capable of. And if I don't know and I see it, now I know he's capable of it. So nobody has to tell me anything. And so if I know it's an area where he can't be trusted, this is where I struggle. I struggle to love them enough to not let them in them areas no more. Huh? But that's my struggle because my heart, I just got a heart like that. I love hard and I want to help, and even to the point where I almost go without myself to help that. And Sister Johnson reminded me I got a family. And she always let me know that. So listen, faith has to be tested. It's the hard times in your life that help bring out your character. I can guarantee you this. The no's in your life have done more for you than the yeses have. The no's. Huh? Yeah, you have to know God. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you something. Everywhere I go in Tyler, I've been hurt before. Everywhere. There's not a place that I go to. Been there in a place you don't go. Your mama house. Right? Your house. Some of them yards you worked in. There ain't a place you go where you haven't been hurt. Coach Sean, there ain't a place you go you ain't been hurt. But you keep going. Right? Because you don't let one incident define your life. This man in the movie, he was a basketball coach. And that fell through for him. So now he has to coach this one handicapped girl. But see, you understand this. Most of us think we find our purpose in what we want to do. But we find our purpose in being and doing what God wants us to do. That's where we find our purpose. I loved hard, but I've learned, not only have I learned a lot about people, but I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned how to do my best to be loyal, because loyalty is more than just a word. Right? Go ahead, Fred. Yeah. Well, your calling has everything to do with the will and not the want. The will of God, not what you want to do. Paul wanted to go to Rome in Acts 15, I'm sorry. But God wanted him to go elsewhere. And then when he went to Rome, guess what? He was in prison. Yeah. So it's a challenge. You know, how many of you admit you've had those knockdown, drag out fights with your spouse before? How many? I admit, I'm both hands. Most of them Sister Johnson fault, but we've had them. Okay. So listen. How many of you ever had that knockdown, drag out, and you were so upset, but wanting them at the same time? Y'all laughing because you know what I'm talking about. You so upset, you in the other room and wishing that they would just come in there and say, I'm sorry, or is there some toilet tissue in here or something? Yeah. You got to have that, you just want them so bad. What is that? That's God challenging us not to live in our hatred. Yeah. Because you know what's right. Most of us know what's right, we just don't do it. You know what I'm saying? We know exactly what's right. I wanted to, I had my life planned out. I was going to have me a red Swiss sweet box on a glass table. That's when them glass coffee tables came out. I want them glass coffee tables. It was going to be in the middle. I was going to keep at least an ounce of weed chopped up at all times, ready to roll blunts. You hear me? That was going to be the rest of my life. I was going to come home from work, roll me up a stove, go with it the rest of my life. But that's not what God wanted. And the more I tried to go after what I wanted, the more difficult my life became. And so since I wouldn't listen to God in the calm, God allowed my parents both to be sick. And so now I couldn't go out and just act a complete utter fool, because I had to stay close to the house and make sure they was taken care of. So then, not only that, I got this wife and these kids. So I still can't have my Swiss sweet box right now, because Casey's going to knock it off the table. You get what I'm saying? So God keeps proving to me circumstantially, why that life is not for me. And most of us, instead of us embracing who God is making us into, we allow small, trivial stuff to keep us away from the one who loves us more than anybody. Let me tell you this. There's no way you want to be close to God and you have a problem being close to people. Because God, if he's in you, he wants to interact with the God in somebody else. And a person that doesn't know him, he wants you to share the God that you know with them. But you can't do that hating everybody. So what if it's a white man? What if it's a white man whose grandfather owned plantations? And it was the John's son plantation. Am I going to be mad at him to the point where I won't share Christ with him? And if that's been passed down generationally in his family, then why would I withhold the very thing that could free and break the generational curse? Life is not about what you want. Life is about, like, you go car shopping. And I'm sure everybody's had this situation. You go to car shopping, you walk in, they got one on the showroom floor. Because everybody wants to brag and say, I bought it off the showroom floor. It's red. It's got all the bells and whistles. Bluetooth. Park assist. Oh, it's nice. Well, I'm gonna buy that. What I want that right there. Write it up. They run your credit. They come back and tell you, we got you approved. But you can't have that one. We got this one over here. You see, in this one, ain't no automatic windows. You got to crank that joker. It only has AM radio in it. It don't have no air conditioner, just got heat. It don't have leather seats, it's got cloth. It don't have Bluetooth, but you can talk on your phone when you're driving in it. It don't have the V6 engine with the supercharger and all that, but you got a 4-cylinder. And if the wind blowing good behind you, you might make it to 70 miles an hour, maybe. And on top of that, the payment is still $700 a month. But I can guarantee you this. You will learn more about discipline in that than you ever would have learned in the car with all the bells and whistles. Yeah. In other words, your left arm going to be so strong. You cranking that window because you ain't got no air conditioning. Yeah. So listen, life is not about. So faith has to be tested. Let me read a little bit more. Where did I stop? The process is similar to exercise. Muscles that are unused eventually atrophy. Exercise builds muscle and strength by actually tearing down muscle fibers. When the body recovers, the muscles rebuild. They're stronger. Breaking down muscles makes them stronger. I'm going to tell you something. I'm on day 3. Breaking down muscles makes you stronger. You're not getting stronger until you lifting and you having pain trying to get that one more up. You shaking. And while you're shaking, muscles are breaking down. God has broke some of us down by bills, loved ones dying, folk lying on us. All of that is a part of being broken down. But you have the choice. If you stop coming, if you stop going to the gym after you get to that right there, all you're going to be the next day is sore. But if you keep coming, eventually you begin to build muscle and lift more weight. But when the new weight gets comfortable, now it's time for you to get heavier weight. Life is not about the ease. made it in the shade. It's all good. It's kind of like God, kind of like a child playing in the yard, the parents in the window looking out at the child, and the parent notices the child falls. Now, most of us are guilty, kind of like me and Kaysen. I'm going to be running out there. But she's never going to learn about the pain of falling until I let her deal with the pain. Right? After she get up and them knees bloody or something like that, she never going to learn that she need to walk right and make sure she pick her feet up and do right. Watch how she trip over stuff and stuff like that. So God sometimes sits back and let us fall. But the problem is we're mad at God instead of learning from our fall. And if you would have listened to God in the first place, the fall wouldn't have been as bad as it was. Got to have some breaking down. Breaking down. God will allow it to happen. Excuse me. All right. When you consider the danger, turmoil, and difficulty Paul faced, it's not hard to see why his spiritual muscles grew stronger. Though developed in difficulties, Paul's faith was rooted in his confession of faith in Jesus Christ, birthed from his life-changing encounter with the risen Lord. Listen, people say you crazy for going to church and I'm sneezing in the microphone. They say you crazy for going to church and being involved the way you are, and they tell you stuff like, well, you ain't got no money, and you broke, your marriage in trouble, you know, your car raggedy, look at where you live. And you going down there, and then you got the nerve talking about you faithful, you want to give tithes and all that kind of stuff. You just as crazy. But they don't understand that God is using those things in your life to build you up and make you stronger. Y'all, I'm going to tell you, to get to where I am today, my God, I've had cars repossessed, filed bankruptcy, I mean, all kinds of stuff. I had to go through it, but it taught me. It taught me how to trust God, how to rely on Him. And most of us, we can't ever get to that point in our lives because we're so mad because God didn't make our lives easy. But God never told you your life was going to be easy. There's nowhere in the Bible that your life is going to be a bed of roses. Oh, well, I can sing. Okay, whole bunch of folks singing, straight catching it. Oh, I'm a preacher. Preachers catch it too. Right, Benny? Oh, I'm a carpenter. Do carpenters catch it, Flo? You know, whatever it is, people on everybody that you know is going through something. But Paul allowed his faith to be built by reaffirming his trust in the Lord Jesus. He wouldn't have been able to do it if he first hadn't started a relationship with him. The worst rascals in the world sometimes say they're looking for something real. God is so real that most of them will never come to him because they want an ideal of what real is and not truth. You cannot have a successful life without truth. Life will always come around and kick you in the rear when you function in lies. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for real. And the best people in your life are the people that challenge you. They challenge you not to be mediocre. You know, I thank God for my wife. I know I don't say that too often, but I should say it more often, because she challenged me. Those children challenged me to grow up as a man. And my wife told me one thing one day. She said, I think she was just kind of, trying to get a new Cadillac or something. But she said, baby, I think you can do anything. And I said, boy, now them some big old shoes to fill. Somebody can do anything? Them some big shoes to fill. Because the reality is, I can't, and she knew that. But I think she was appreciating who I was becoming, but still challenging me to become more. A wife ought to challenge, a husband ought to challenge his wife. You know, I've never been able to deal with a woman that didn't have no brain. I just couldn't, and so my wife, she got 3 or 4 degrees. The Lord gave me exactly what I needed. She's smarter than me. You see, but her being smart comes with some stuff, though. Because God has invested in her, and God wants me to make good on the investment. So I have to challenge her. She has to challenge me. Right? All right. Who's more inspiring to you? Believers fervently following Jesus with no scars or marks of their trials, or believers with deep wounds who remain radically faithful? Which one? Deep wounds. Yeah. George S. Truett, this one, I'm going to say this for a sermon illustration, great illustration. George S. Truett, Theological School in Baylor is named after him. Was in Dallas. He pastored First Baptist in Dallas. He was out on a hunting incident and accidentally killed a man. He vowed he'd never preach again. He said, he just, because he felt horrible for what he did. Something like that happened. You say it was an accident, and, old Joe Blow in the neighborhood going to say, no, I want to accident. You trying to shoot that boy. Can you imagine the ridicule he was under? But George S. Truett says this. He says, when that happened to him is when his ministry took off. You a murderer, man. People talk about W.A. Criswell, who pastored First Baptist. He preached through the whole Bible a couple times. For 30-some odd years he was there, just book by book. They just, that's matter of fact, people, when they remember people who died in the church, they say, oh yeah, he died in Genesis. Oh yeah, he died in Philippians. That's how they talk. But listen, he was set up to do ministry on the level that he did it by a man that was a murderer. Now, school is named after him. God can do a lot with the leftovers. Do you hear what I'm saying? No matter how bad it is, God can do a lot with the leftovers. You got to give it to him. It's not, nothing against young kid preachers, but I do better listening to somebody who, you preach different when you've been through some stuff. Let me just say that. You sing different when you've been through. You cook different. I believe that, old home cooked food and the old mothers back in the day, I think, what made the difference in that cooking? Well, you got to think about a couple things. Number one, they was at home all the time. Most of them. They spent hours in that kitchen cooking. Hours in there. Nowadays, we got two-income families, and the wife can't spend that kind of time in the kitchen. So you got the best product, but can you imagine what had to be thrown out from all the mistakes? Spending time. Can you imagine? So it's you having to go through some stuff. You know what? Home-cooked food tastes different than fast food. It hit different than fast food. You can eat something at home that's home-cooked, and you'll be full for a couple hours, 5, 6 hours, sometime all day. You eat you a Big Mac and a large fry, in 2 hours, you're going to be hungry again. Got to go through some stuff. Faith that has to be tested. Folk wouldn't believe that Bay walk around with a bullet in his head. You know what I mean? But God allowed it, gave him a testimony. And some folks say, man, he talk crazy, and he might slur his words sometime, or all that kind of stuff. But guess what? If he start talking, everybody will start listening. God can use what you see as a negative as a positive for him. He can do it. Somebody asking why your life ain't together. It's just in pieces. Maybe it ain't together because you keep holding the pieces. You won't get the pieces to God. Well, how do I give it to him? You surrender. Well, how do I surrender? Quit trying to navigate your life yourself and let God do it. Surrender to him today. Do it now. No matter how bad off you are, God can still use you with your failures, with your faults. I done preached a whole bunch of bad sermons. Been depressed and ashamed sometimes. Time to show my face again because it was so bad. But guess what, Ben, I learned? I learned if I just keep on showing up, God will give me a good one. I might get one good one out of 100. But God will give me a good one. You got to keep going, y'all. Your testimony, you've been through some stuff. But why do let me ask you this. When you share what happened to you, who are you looking to, who do you want to emerge as the one with all the credit? You or God? If God gets all the glory, then why are you mad when people don't respond to your story? If he gets all the glory. If it's God, it's him. He gets glory. He gets glory out of what we're going through. I'm what you call, I believe in what's called predestination versus free will as pertains to salvation. Some people say, that, they came to Jesus just as they was. They were weary, wounded, and sad. My testimony is this. God brought me to Jesus just as I was. Because if he wouldn't have bought me, I never would have came. Do you hear what I'm saying? Me, in my own mind, listen, Coach Sean, there's no way in the world I would have got saved if God wouldn't have pursued me. Listen, I wouldn't have did. So what was it that time I'd be in the climax thing about Jesus? That was God after me. Just like he's after you tonight. And God won't rest until you surrender because you belong to him. You've been through some stuff. Sometime in church, it's some mean folks in church. Ex-pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers, murderers. All kind of folks come through the doors of the church. What a great testimony to a world that deals with all the things that we've come from. you've ever been, if you're a woman, if you've ever been a little generous, I just say that for lack of a better term. And when you see a young lady struggling, your immediate reaction ought not be judgment. It ought to be a helping hand. If you're a brother and you are a little generous, taking things for granted, taking advantage of women and all that kind of stuff, when you see a man that's doing that, you ought to be trying to teach him how not to be that dude. If we would spend more time teaching, we'd be less concerned and less depressed about who we are and our purpose in life. Got to disciple somebody. Well, what is God's response when struggle, going through something? Paul prayed, and he says in 2 Corinthians 12, 8 through 10, he said, "The thorn in my flesh, the messenger of Satan, to buffet me." He said, 3 times I asked God to remove it. 3 times. And God's only response is, "My grace is sufficient." And your strength is made perfect in weakness. God is saying to you right now, when you're saying you can't do this, you can't do that, there's no way you'll be able to achieve this, God can't use me to do this, God is saying my grace is sufficient. God can use you with the thorn. Bible never says Paul ever got rid of it. But look what he did. Wrote over half of the New Testament. Because you fulfilling your purpose has nothing to do with your ability and everything to do with God's ability in you. My grace. You want to give God an excuse. God says, "I'm going to give you grace to deal with what you're going through." Man, I'm going to give you some grace. I don't know about you. I worry over things. And I said I worry. I think about it a lot, Bendy. Like when I got a lot going on, I don't sleep well at night. Like I wake up, to get my little cold piece of chicken or pork chops or whatever, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I can't go back to sleep. Then I sit up there and stare at my beautiful wife. Then I go through a purse to see if I can find some annihilators. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But sometimes I can't handle it. But Coach Sean, I learned this, that if I can give it to God, I can go to sleep. If I can just turn it over to him. Anybody mind ever be racing, you can't slow your mind down? Just racing over and over again. Y'all, listen. I literally, one time, went through fixing my credit, every bill I had, all in my head. One thing kept going to another. Just boom, boom, boom. And I realized I had so much debt, it was going to take me all night to get through all this stuff. I had to stop myself and pray and say, "God, this is yours." And when I did that, I was able to get some rest. Some of you in here having trouble sleeping. You up, just up. Done smoked 12 packs of cigarettes in one night, just up. Yeah, 12 packs. No, you ain't got no money. You say the crackhead will smoke up everything, and you done smoked up everything. You can't even eat the next day because of Marlboro or whatever them cigarettes, Newports. The nerves bad. You keep trying in your own power. Keep trying to do it yourself. Don't realize you can't do it. You can't You cannot do it. You got to call some help. I'm going to close with this. I was putting some coilovers shocks on my 69. And Floyd, I decided I'm gonna do this myself. I ain't gonna pay nobody. I'm gonna get out here. I went and bought me some jacks, some car stands, and so Monell, I decided one day I'm gonna go out here and tear it down. So I took the wheel off. I took off the brake caliper, all that. I'm just taking stuff off. You know, laying it over there. I'm laying it in order, but I'm taking it off. You know what I'm saying? Took out the control arms, took them all. I took them off. Shoot, I'm going to change. Shoot. But then I ran into some stuff. I didn't know what to do. My car would have still been in the shop, out there in my shop, still broke down if I hadn't had sense to pick up the phone and call my neighbor Adrian and said, man, come help me. And when he got over there, I told him, I said, well, let me do it. I need to learn how to do this. You let me do it. He said, no, you watch me do it. And so on the driver's side, I watched him do it. He put it all together and everything. Brother Johnson came out there. And so, you know, between the three of us, we might have had a half a mechanic. But anyway, we got that thing together. And so he said, now, on the other wheel, he said, now check this out. You tear it down. I couldn't break the bolts. He said, well, I'm going to break the bolts and you do the rest. Tore it down. And I remembered what he was doing. And when I was going to do something out of step, he would say, no, you go right here with that one. You go this right here. You turn this and tighten this to a certain degree. Don't you know that's how God works? God is saying, you done tore your life up. Let me put it back together. Now the rest of your life, I'm going to give you the power and the knowledge on how to live and put stuff back together. But just in case you get it messed up, I'm here. All you got to do is call me. Some of us still trying to fix it ourselves, and we ain't listen to God on the driver's side. You trying to work on the path. So you got your whole car just tore up. And now I got to do coilovers on the back now, and I got the parts. I done had them for a year probably. Got the whole assembly, Floyd. Disc brakes and everything. Got it all. Still in the box. I ain't even opened the box. But when I do, instead of me just going crazy trying to fix it by myself, I'm going to call somebody that know what they do so they can start with me. You see, most of us want to start on ourselves and then call God when we have a flat. But he's going to start with me. We're going to get it fixed. That's our lesson for tonight. Any questions or comments?